And our final guest is Kathleen Addy. She's chairperson of the National Commission for Civic Education, NCCE, and former deputy chair of the commission in charge of finance and administration. She was previously with the Ghana Center for Democratic Development, CDD, where she worked as the Afrobarometer Communications Coordinator with oversight responsibilities for 7 countries across East and West Africa. Prior to Afrobarometer, Ms. Addy was with the Center for Policy Analysis, a leading think tank that provided advisory services for the government of Ghana, among others. As a research and communications officer at CEPA, her focus was on economic partnership agreement between Ghana and the European Union, as well as women's economic empowerment. She has also consulted on a wide range of issues for different development partners, including Star Ghana, GIZ, and ILO. Ms. Addy is highly regarded as a civic activist with particular interest in women's empowerment, as well as accountable and responsive governance, and has supported different civil society groups fighting for good governance and women's rights in Ghana. Thank you so very much. And you have said that if we want to amend the Constitution, we should amend it in a manner that cures the ills of society. Let's hear you. Please unmute your mic.
Can you hear me, please?
Can hear you now, please. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you very much, Samson, and thank you for this opportunity to participate in yet another program focused on constitutional review, constitutional reforms, constitutional amendments in Ghana. I would also like to situate my presentation in the context of the introduction to the 1992 Constitution, and also parts of Chapter 6, which is the Directive Principles of State Policy. And so the preamble reads, and I don't want to go over it because apparently I have less time than everyone else, which is unfair, therefore unconstitutional. Something I stated to the media on 7th of January this year, when we celebrated the 30th anniversary of the promulgation of the Constitution. 30 years of constitutional democracy marks a true watershed milestone in the history of our democracy. None of our previous democratic constitutions lasted anywhere near this long. Both the 1969 and 1979 constitutions lasted approximately 2.5 years, and the 1957 independent constitution only lasted longer than 3 years. So this is a defining moment in our political history as a country, and we should be quite rightly proud of how far we've come. Our achievements are monumental, and Ghana's reputation all over Africa as a beacon for democracy is very well deserved. We've held 8 democratic elections. And Ghana's reputation all over Africa as a beacon for democracy is very well deserved. We've held 8 democratic elections. Elections have been keenly fought, but the outcomes never preordained. And even though they are intensely fought, the winner is always magnanimous. The opposition always accepts the outcome or uses constitutional means to challenge the outcome, generally speaking. Let me also highlight that our economic performance over the last 30 years under democratic rule is superior to the 30 years prior to democratic rule. So this is just to set the backdrop for what I'm about to say. And to say now that, in spite of all of that, all these good things that we have achieved as a constitutional democracy under this 4th Republican Constitution, it is indisputable that we live in a time of restlessness, discontent, with a unanimous clamor for constitutional amendment that will ostensibly solve all our problems. By the way, the title of my presentation is, "By all means, let's amend the Constitution if we must." However, let's also make sure that the amendment actually cures the ills we want to eradicate as a society. We are all keenly aware of the many problems plaguing us. And we are also aware that many of those problems will not be resolved by constitutional amendment. We have a plethora of laws in this country that we flout with impunity. Ace has just talked about some of them. At every level, at the political level, at every level, ordinary people, we flout laws with impunity. What is to say that a new constitution will be something different? I think that Oliver intimated that if the constitution is if we have a new constitution that involves everybody, then people will obey the rules or will go by the laws. But going by the track record, that is not the case. The constitution, as we have it, this also already been stated, was a really grassroots affair. The putting it together was a grassroots affair. So it is also not automatic that just because a lot of people's voices come together in putting together a constitution means that that constitution will work. So, I mean, I just want to talk about a couple of things. These may sound very mundane, but these are the kinds of things that, you know, we need to resolve, or we need to look at, we need to address as citizens of a country. And these things which plague our society, we have to ask ourselves, is it constitutional reforms that will solve these problems? So basically, there are very basic things we can do, and then there are important things we can do, such as constitutional reforms. The basic things, are we doing them? So for instance, which constitutional reforms, new laws are needed to ensure that people who are already paid to deliver government services do not extort arbitrary fees before providing those services to citizens? Do we need constitutional reforms before, for instance, we sanitize our airwaves? Currently, we don't vet anything that we show that is aired on TV or radio. We have fed a whole generation of young people a steady diet of movies and telenovelas. We promote immoral and unethical content, undesirable values. And we see the results, because what you feed the brain, you reap. Is what you put in is what you get out. So we have citizens who, you know, may not necessarily have the right values, but this is what we have done. And it's not because of the Constitution, it's because the Constitution, as we have it, has not been implemented properly. We sit in this place where, you know, I heard of a case where a sick person was pushed out of public transport and abandoned by the roadside in a community where she or he knew no one, and did not get help and died. So what kind of values do we have as a society that has brought us to this point where we are sitting in a bus and somebody is dying, and we just push the person onto the roadside and drive on? And the people in that community look at him and also just look at him, and he's there and he doesn't get any help, and he dies right there. This does not require constitutional reform, but these things are important if we are supposed to evolve as a society, build a developed or oriented country. We need to have some values. Which constitutional reforms will erase the culture of insults, abuse, online bullying that is now an integral part of debate and disagreement? Which constitutional reforms will truly fill our hearts with true humility and make us cherish fearless honesty as prescribed in our national anthem? I say these things because we could set ourselves up for great disappointment if we proceed as if constitutional reforms will resolve all the pertinent challenges we face as a people. And I'm happy to be the last speaker because I don't have to go over all the detailed, particular reforms that are needed. But I just want us to have a broad view. Look at the background, look at what has happened before, and look at where we are, the path that we are trying to chart, and ask ourselves if the way we are today, the values that we hold dear, the things that we do, the way we live our lives, will a new constitution make a difference in all of that? As we work towards these reforms, we must not lose sight of failed attempts to achieve the same objectives in the past. And particularly, I take us back to 2010, when President Jonathan Mills set up a Constitutional Review Commission that undertook a comprehensive review of the Constitution and produced a report that outlined an extensive list of proposed amendments. I mean, if we have to, if there was no more grassroots process used for that reforms. I know because NCCE was part of that whole exercise, putting together town hall meetings, ensuring that all the voices of the people, were heard, and all the hopes and aspirations of the people were fed into for the proposals. What happened after that? Nothing. White paper produced. The exercise came to a screeching halt. We went back to our daily grind, as it were. Nothing more was done or heard of for the next 10 years plus. A whole decade went by, nothing happened. Then in 2020, President Akufo-Addo initiated a process for limited but extremely important amendment that would have partially cured the much loathed concentration of power in the presidency by reducing the number of appointees, appointments that the president gets to make, because at least 261 MMPs would have been elected instead of appointed as things stand. And nothing came of that. Nothing came of that as well. We went all the way to the end, and we could not reach a consensus as a people, as political parties, and the whole thing came to a screeching halt. It crashed. So what is to say that going forward, this new drive for constitutional amendments will work? Bear in mind that the proposal for amendments that, for reform of local government, that has mass appeal. Everybody agrees with that. The political parties agree. And this, as all the previous speakers have said, this is one of the reforms that we all know is actually very much needed at this point. But even when the moment came for us to go through with that, we didn't do anything. We couldn't do it. And I'm saying all these things because we need to chart a roadmap for actually getting it done. I started by saying that I'm happy to be participating in yet another program to talk about constitutional reforms. And I say that because there have been many, many, many programs. In the last couple of years, there's a growing clamor, there's a call rising to a crescendo. And as for the talking, we are very good at. And outlining the ills, we are good at. And saying what needs to be done, we are good at. And painting a rosy picture of the future that we all aspire to. We are very good at doing all those things. Where is the roadmap? How are we going to go about it? What are we going to do? I think that's where we are now. We don't need to talk about this anymore. We just need to get on with it. That's what we want. Oh no, let me just finish something, please. Just a few minutes. Nevertheless, I want to point out that Ghanaians actually hold a very positive view of our democracy, as many surveys have indicated. I also want to read out, and I'm saying this because as the Commission for Civic Education, we don't have a strong position. It's not our role to have a strong position on amendments in the sense of what gets to be amended, what gets to be thrown out, what gets to be put in. It's not really our role. Our interest is in ensuring that the voices and hopes and aspirations of ordinary Ghanaians are reflected in any reforms. I've also said that if there's going to be a constitutional reform process of any sort, it must be multi-stakeholder and a multi-partisan in the approach in terms of the voices, because we all know that if we don't get those dynamics right, if we don't get at least the two leading parties plus all the other political parties involved, we will go and move and continue to build up, but nothing will happen. So as a commission, we say that reform the constitution if you must, but we don't want this to be another process that gets hijacked by the elite, another process that gets hijacked by interests that are there to push a particular agenda, but it's a process that is a true reflection of the voices of people, of the hopes of people. It is true that somebody sitting in some community somewhere may not understand the process, but it is not true that that person does not have hopes and aspirations as a Ghanaian that must be enabled by a constitution that is set up in a particular way. So to that extent, it is important that we have all the voices, that the process is not hijacked, that there are no political shenanigans to tank the process and to drive us all to a point only for it to be scuttled.
All right.
I don't think we need to go through that again.
Okay.
So I must say, no, that's two more things. Just one, maybe one more.
I'm sorry, but the system will automatically cut us off in the next 3 minutes. If you can do just a minute.
Okay, but I must point out that if we are going to do reform, there are two that at least I find that cut across, everybody agrees on. One is changes to Article 243 and the other articles that are around the elections of MMDC. And then Article 78 on the appointment of ministers from Parliament. I think these two, there's general consensus that if we don't do anything at all, these two we must do something about.
All right. Thank you very much. Kathleen Addy is the chairperson of the NCCE. And